contribute to the industry enough to where at the beginning we were just solving intelligence and interrogation issues very quickly. But now the system that I teach and the things that I teach, not just in sales, but I teach like the most advanced forms of persuasion and influence I've ever seen in my days anyway. And it's incredible that it really boils down to self-development. It boils down to a lot of things like empathy and social skills. And that's really what a lot of people need to learn. We tend to think, that if we look at the Fortune 500 companies and we took the top sales guy out of each one of those companies, would they be the ones who went to all the training schools, or would they be the ones with through the roof social skills and they can talk to anybody? Yeah. It's always that guy. But then when a company has sales problems, they go to this solution. And that's always fascinated me. We know it. We all agree. It's kind of a universal agreement that guy, the guy with social skills, the guy with authority, the guy with charisma, he can talk to anybody, he can read people very well, is always going to beat the guy with the tactics and book knowledge. But we tend to say, oh, we need more tactics and book knowledge here. We need a better script. When people call in, we need a better script to answer the phone so we can close them.
Yeah. So I like that, because I would say to quote one of my former program managers, he said, that's the difference between skills and a pedigree.
Yeah.
He says sometimes the pedigree isn't what we need. So that's awesome. So have you felt like when you were in the Navy, did you get to learn from some incredible, like individual, creative, persuasive guys that didn't have the pedigree? They just had the skills? Or has it been more on the outside now that you're retired, that you've been around like guys like Mark Bowden, Robin Dreek, who are some of the other guys that you do your little panel with?
Yeah, Scott Rouse and Greg Hartley on our YouTube channel. And we started it for fun and just hit 130,000 subscribers in no time.
Wow.
And yeah, but working with those guys is incredible, because it's the only time I'm going to get sharper is by either pushing myself way outside my comfort zone, which is hard to do nowadays after I've hit the 30,000 hour rule a long time ago, and just in this field. So hanging out with these other guys and hearing these competing perspectives is one of the best ways that I've been able to grow as a person.
Sure. Did the Navy have anybody like that for you to develop from? Or
I had a mentor who was a DOD guy, and he worked at DIA kind of stuff, but he was in his 70s, and he kind of raised me through my 20s. And when I was a young idiot, I had purchased this book called The Game. It was about pickup techniques and like the seduction stuff. And it was fascinating. At first, it seems like, wow, there's some real methods behind this. And I had this book. I won't say the title. I don't want to embarrass the author. I don't want to put anybody down. But I had this like pickup tactics book that was recommended on Amazon or whatever back then. And I brought it to lunch, and this guy and I are having lunch, and I was telling him about it. And he said, "Do you have the book with you?" And I said, "Yeah, I've got it. I've got it right here." And I pulled it out, stuck it on the table. And he says, "Oh, you can flip through the entire book, flip to any page you want, and show me how the stuff in that book or whatever technique you point to is not a way to fake or pretend like you have your shit together." I was done at that point. I literally went through and looked through the whole thing, and I was finished at that point. I was kind of shut down.
You're like, where's a bonfire? I could throw this in.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you got real quick, DIA guy, you said civilian. Did you get to work with those agencies at all while you were in too?
No.
Man, that's actually, DIA is what I wanted to do after I got out, that's why I never got tattoos. I never needed distinguishing marks were pretty important.
Yeah.
Bald head's obviously distinguishing mark, but I never got into the DIA side or the intel side, but obviously you could tell, I mean, it's a very important subject for me. And I think just being around it as a Marine, you're being around the het guys and the intel guys and doing a lot of raids and stuff, just such an important part of that's really psychological part of anything is how you show your, I guess, control, but also your tactics too. It's an important thing for the
Yeah.
other side or those that you're supporting to know what you're doing through the
I've noticed
psychological
like
part.
those guys who are deep level DIA or deep level CIA operators are never zoomed in when it comes to problems and issues. So like there's some riot or protest going on in XYZ village, and you ask them about that and they say, well, this thing happened over in Hong Kong 2 weeks ago, and this laboratory in Russia was just attacked last week. And that, they'll connect they're zoomed so far out on problems that this little thing is not never this little thing right here. So it's always there's some kind of strange connection, which sounds like a conspiracy theory. Even when you read like those intel reports for that stuff, it's so far zoomed out and still connected. And those guys tend to see threads that nobody else would ever see.
That's interesting. It's kind of like the trunk line effect, where things are tied together. Man, that's obviously stuff that I could go in deep about, but let's not go down that rabbit hole. But that's very interesting stuff to me. Now, sticking on the pill part, the impact part, obviously I know, knowing you personally and knowing as well what you've already done, you're making that impact. And now shifting into something that is very important for you, the L part, the first L in the pill, the leadership part. Can you talk about like, perspective of leadership to the individual, but also big picture perspective leadership as an organization and as a team, and kind of where you got your creative ways to explain leadership from?
I don't know where they came from. I think it was just years of research. But I think on an individual leadership level, from a person, I'm called a mind control expert, but from a behavioral expert's perspective on what really makes leadership is everything that goes back to evolutionary psychology. So if we go back a million years, somebody became a tribal leader most likely because they were the most easy to follow. And we tend to, there's a couple of things that we follow with leadership, and I think the biggest one is composure. And this goes back to all animals. If you look at dogs, if you look at cows, if you look at any mammal, it really draws back to composure being the key factor. And Caesar Milan, who is the dog whisperer, like
Oh
somebody
yeah,
says, "Hey, my dog bites everybody.
sure.
I need
That's
help."
me. I got 4 dogs and recently had to rehome one because he bit our neighbor.
Oh man.
Anyway, but yeah, Caesar is a friend of mine in the house on the TV.
Yeah. So he has a book, I think, and I've read lots of books on leadership, 100 maybe. And as a behavioral expert, I think Caesar Milan's book is the best book on leadership that's ever been written. And it's called Being the Pack Leader. But it talks about doing this in a way where you can't speak. There's not some cool phrase that you can say that makes you a leader. There's not some cool thing. It's your behavior, your attitude, and how you are on the inside is what's going to make you a leader or not. And in this book, he had the most profound quote I've ever read in a leadership book. And he said, humans are the only mammal on earth that will follow an unstable leader. And that really took me back, like, and showed me that stability is technically one of those things our brain, it's not, we're not consciously looking for that at all. This is way deep in our brain that's been, memorizing these things for millions of years. It's the same reason, we're born to communicate. We're born with facial expressions. We're born to be able to pick up our mouth. We cover our mouth. If we say something stupid, cross our arms. All these things are come in our brain right as we come out into the earth, but we're not born with language at all. So we're a lot more likely on a mammal level to relate to nonverbal things. And stability is one of those things you can see. Even if you turn the volume off on any conversation, you can see stability. You can feel it in a conversation. And I think that's really interesting that's something that we follow. And at the end of the day, if there's a wolf that's leading a pack of wolves, and it starts acting crazy and unstable, boom, taken out. Sometimes within minutes, that thing is done, and there's a new wolf in charge that's more stable. And it takes that, and humans are the same way. And we evolved, and I wish I could unpack the whole authority thing here, but we evolved in a way where there's some internal traits that we follow for leaders, and we can sense those on an unconscious level. And I'll tell you the reason that we can't really understand what we see. We can't put our finger on it. We may think that, like, oh, it's because this, and this. But typically, when we decide someone is a very good leader, we decide to follow somebody, it's a completely unconscious process. Down in the middle of our brain, there's no language processing capability. We can't speak English down in the mammalian or animal part of our brain. So this part that regulates fear and authority and social belonging is between your ears. So if you stick your fingers in your ears, you'd be pointing right at it. That part of the brain doesn't speak English. So when it sees something, it can't send you a text or like tell you what it's seeing.
Or an emoji.
Right. It can't do anything. So it gives us a gut feeling, and then our conscious brain, which is our human part of our brain, will rationalize why. It's just going to look for, oh, it's probably because of this, and this. So it's backwards rationalizing a decision that's already been made.
Okay, all right, let's pause right there. Okay, I love this stuff, as you know. I know you do too. So, at what point do you feel like the DNA kicks in and it's survival mode?
What do you mean?
So when you tie the amygdala, or the animal part of the brain, to the frontal lobe, reasoning and judgment, where does survival mode kick in with I'll follow this uncertain leader, or I'll follow this leader that doesn't have structure, that isn't good, but I don't know what else to do. Like, why are humans the only ones that do that?
We're the only ones that do it because we have that frontal cortex. Right?
That's the difference between like a zebra learning to not go in this field because lions will chase you, but he goes back every day because his brain just says create space for this moment, but not remember it for the future.
Yeah. And when we make a decision to follow somebody and they turn out to be a piece of crap, we have the gray matter in our brain to be able to go, yeah, well, maybe he's not that bad because of this and this and this. So we can rationalize that. Animals can't. Animals don't have the ability to ask the question, why? And that's typically how that works. And after, I've been doing this 20 years. I think there are 5 internal qualities that make up someone who's a really good leader. And I define the word leadership as the ability to produce followers through your behavior alone. That's it. And that is confidence, discipline, leadership, gratitude, and enjoyment. And when I say confidence, it's not hard. It's just a stellar reputation with yourself and a generalized expectation of positive outcomes. That's about it. And when I say discipline, the one sentence definition of discipline from a behavior expert is discipline is when you put the needs of your future self ahead of your own. That's it. So confidence, discipline, leadership. We know the definition of leadership. I'm producing followers through my behavior all by itself. And then gratitude. And this is just, I'm grateful for what I have. And then enjoyment of being always in enjoyment. This is the most magnetic human behavior. The most charismatic human behavior is enjoyment first. That makes us want to be with, be around, or follow other people is enjoyment. It's really interesting. I was driving around a very wealthy neighborhood here in Virginia Beach with my son, who was probably 9 or 10 at the time. And everyone waved. Everyone's smiling. Everyone waves. They're walking their dogs. The guy mowing his lawn. We're driving by and he waves. And they don't know us. They don't know who we are. And my son said, wow, they're all happy because they're living in this neighborhood. And I said, flip that around. They're probably living here because they had that enjoyment to begin with. And somebody on a spiritual level might say, you know, you're attracting that to you because you're
Sure.
living as if you have that already. But on a scientific level, they're enjoying so much. They have that magnetic quality. It makes them a leader in their industry. It makes them a leader in their company,
Sure.
in their environment.